For some of us, death is not a punishment. Living is what the punishment is.
When I look at you, I look at hate.
When you look at me, you know what hate is. I don't know what love is. Two words I don't like to use is love and sorry.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
From Ted Bundy's bone-chilling confession just a day before his execution, to Brew Ross's eerie laughter as he recounted that brutal rape and violation of a college student. These are the most disturbing serial killer interviews of all time. Starting with the case of Richard Ramirez, the man one psychiatrist said wasn't just a killer but a self-made psychopath.
Do you admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
Ramirez was an embodiment of evil, terrorizing Los Angeles for a year and a few months. He would kill at least 14 people in that time span, with his methods so degenerate that even detectives were scared of what he was capable of.
Well, he took a woman in her 60s and stomped her to death with his foot, leaving an imprint of a shoe on the side of her face. He strangled, he used a ligature, he used a tire iron on a girl, beat her, left her for dead.
In 1989, Ramirez was convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. He was given 19 death sentences, but even behind bars, Ramirez never expressed any remorse for his crimes.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments.
No comments.
I cannot answer that at this time.
However, one of the few things he could talk about was his likeness for Satanism.
As far as Satan is concerned, I believe in a malevolent being. His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
But even with that, Ramirez thought fake stories about him were being circulated, and also felt to some degree he's not among the worst of humankind.
The world has been fed many lies about me. It would be improper for me to comment on my LA convictions and on my pending case here in San Francisco.
Why?
Because of my appeals.
Are you appealing these because you say you're innocent? You didn't kill 13 people?
That is correct.
You didn't kill 13 people.
Again, it would be improper for me to comment in any regard to that question.
You have now entered a very rare group of people in this country. You're in the ranks of Charlie Manson, Ted Bundy. You claim you didn't commit these murders, but you're right in there now as far as everybody else is concerned.
Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do in a large one. They are a product of the times, and these are bloodthirsty times. Even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough, but then again, maybe they don't.
Do you have emotions, Richard?
No comment.
Tell me what kind of emotions you got going through you right now.
I'll tell you what, I gave up on love and happiness a long time ago.
Why?
I don't care to explain that. Let the quote stand for itself.
And his scripted words continued.
People in this day and age are brainwashed and programmed like a computer at being nothing more than puppets. This nation, this country is founded in violence. Violent delights tend to have violent ends. Madness is something rare in individuals, but in groups, people, and ages, it is a rule. Killing is killing, whether done for duty, profit, or fun. Men murdered themselves into this democracy.
You're good at reading your script, Richard, but you're not much at answering my direct question.
On June 7th, 2013, Ramirez died on death row while awaiting his execution. But we can also bet death had nothing on this guy.
I don't care about myself, really. No, I don't care about what happens to me. I never did, really.
Next up is Edmund Kemper.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's far more than 35. It isn't that impossible in this society. It happens.
Are there more people?
They didn't give up.
How many?
She didn't give up. I did. I came in out of the cold. And what I'm saying is there are some people who prefer it in the code.
Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer, is an American serial killer who murdered 10 people, including his grandparents, mother, and 6 young women between 1964 and 73. Born in Burbank, California, from a young age he exhibited violent tendencies. At 15, he killed his grandparents and was committed to a state hospital before his release at the age of 21. And when he got out, he would start his killing spree, targeting female college students in California, often picking them up while they were hitchhiking. Kemper was known for his immense size, standing 6 foot 9 inches tall, and also his high intelligence. He displayed extreme cruelty, though, engaging in acts of philia and dismemberment. His final victim was his own mother, whom he killed and mutilated in 1973. Kemper was arrested and surprisingly requested to be handed the death penalty, but capital punishment had been suspended in California at that time, so he instead received 8 concurrent life sentences. Yet there was just something disturbing about his beliefs and psyche, something people finally got to understand during one chilling interview in 1994.
I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies, positive and negative, depending on a mood. That would trigger one or the other. And outside, I looked troubled at times. Other times I looked moody. Other times perfectly serene. Not very sane.
When asked why he killed the girls, his answer was very direct.
Why did you actually kill the girls?
My frustration, my inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but emotionally I was impotent. I was scared to death of failing in male-female relationships. I knew absolutely nothing about that whole area, even if just sitting down and talking with the young lady. I need to be able to really communicate, and ironically enough, that's why I began picking people up. And I'm picking up young women, and I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside, I could feel it consuming my insides, this fantastic passion. It was overwhelming me.
And once he started killing, there was no going back.
It was getting easier to do. I was getting better at it. I was getting less detectable. I started flaunting that invisibility, severing a human head, 2 of them, at night in front of my mother's residence, with her at home, my neighbors at home upstairs, their picture window open, the curtains open, 11 o'clock at night, the lights are on. All they have to do is walk by, look out, and I've had it.
Why did you keep the heads? Why did you cut them off, and why did you keep them?
Something out of my childhood. I could put it on an incident. I mean, my father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner. You know, we could say it was something that simple. I don't think it was.
And of all the murders he committed, it's safe to say his mother's hit him the most.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life, earlier life, her upbringing, a failed marriage with my father. I'm a constant reminder of that failure. I walked up to her bed. She's laying there reading a paperback, as many thousands of nights before. And she said, "Oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Shit. I looked at her, I said, "No." I said, "Good night." And I knew I was going to kill her, you know? And it was so cold and so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly.
The hours?
Because I'm not a lizard, I'm not from under a rock. I came out of her vagina. See? Came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. It's one of our arguments. And I called for Ed, and I at her corpse. It's there, you know? Woman dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up. And what's her closing words? I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. God, I wish I had.
After murdering her, he turned himself in.
Why did you wind up giving yourself up?
It had to stop. It had to stop. Once my mother was dead, there's almost a cathartic process at that point. I got physically ill right then, when she died, when I murdered her. And once she was dead, there was no way I could back out. I had backed down from giving up 1,000 times. You know, I used to get drunk and go sit out in front of the sheriff's department in a parking lot across the street on one of those little concrete parking berms, and I just sit there and say, no, I still can't. The clanging doors, I can still hear them. No, because they'll never open again.
And those walls will never be opened for him, as he's now incarcerated for life at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville.
Where might you be if you'd never given in to the impulse to murder?
Where might I be? If my parole had been successful, I believe I'd be married, I'd have children, I'd be heading toward my first grandchildren.
Much like Kemper, Charles Manson was also driven by a profound darkness. However, while Kemper's actions were horrifying, Manson's malevolence reached a deeper and more sinister level.
From your words, as Mr. Emmons quotes them in this book, it's clear that you were guilty of murder, and yet he says in all his conversations with you, he never heard you express remorse. Have you never felt it?
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me.
Every Charles Manson interview is marred by his lucid, manipulative, and sometimes incoherent speech.
Are you mad? Do you feel like Woods Kebab Referendus? Get friends, Boots Cookies? They're remits to get
He was an American criminal mastermind, cult leader, and musician who founded the infamous Manson family, a notorious cult terrorizing California in the late 1960s. Under his twisted influence, cult members would execute a chilling series of at least 9 murders across 4 locations in the summer of '69. And although many books would claim he suffered from schizophrenia, a new analysis clearly states that this man was indeed a psychopath. And for anyone out there doubting that, here's one interview from '87 that might change your mind.
If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's gonna happen when I get out of here?
Guilty. I wouldn't do anything that I felt guilty about.
You don't feel guilty at all?
There's no need to feel guilty. I haven't done anything I'm ashamed of. Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough, for not giving enough, for not being more perceptive, for not being aware enough, for not understanding, for being stupid. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better.
Though authorities suspected Manson of personally committing a few murders, he was never convicted of any. Now, despite this, his violent tendencies were undeniable. And when asked how he would kill someone if given the chance, this was his chilling response.
You know, if I wanted to kill somebody, I'd take this book and beat you to death with it, and I wouldn't feel a thing. It'd be just like walking to the drugstore.
And then he talked about some crimes he'd committed.
In my whole life, I've burglarized a grocery store, stole some nickels and dimes, busted open a stamp machine, stole a few automobiles, and cashed a couple checks. I'm a petty car thief. I've been with prostitutes and bums and winos and all my life. This street is my world. I don't pretend to go uptown and be anything fancy. I can, but I find more real in the world that I'm in than I do the tinsel. And the real world is the one I have to deal with every day, you know. Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Manson was initially sentenced to death, but it was later commuted to life in prison. And on November 19, 2017, after nearly 50 years behind bars, Manson died of natural causes at the age of 83. Next is the cruel interview of Ted Bundy.
You are scheduled to be executed tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock if you don't receive another stay. What is going through your mind? What thoughts have you had in these last few days?
I won't kid you to say that it's something that I feel that I am in control of, or something that I've come to terms with, because I haven't. It's a moment-by-moment thing. Sometimes I feel very tranquil, and other times I don't feel tranquil at all. What's going through my mind right now is to use the minutes and hours that I have left as fruitfully as possible and see what happens.
Ted Bundy was an American serial killer and diagnosed psychopath. He would kidnap, rape, and murder dozens of women and girls during the 70s. But what's really interesting here is that for many years, Bundy's actions went unnoticed. The dude with charming looks that seemed to be the type of guy who could flirt with the prettiest ladies around turned out to be a sadistic sociopath, deriving pleasure from seeing others in pain. He routinely lured his victims to secluded areas and took them captive before assaulting them and murdering them. On top of that, he would come back to those corpses and perform sexual acts till their bodies were completely decomposed. In 1975, he was finally arrested and handed the death penalty. But the real shocker came the day before his execution, when Bundy spilled his deepest, darkest secrets in a chilling interview, offering a rare glimpse into the twisted mind and sinister motives behind his heinous crimes.
Those that involve violence and sexual violence. Because the wedding of those two forces, as I know only too well, brings about behavior that is just too terrible to describe. I would keep looking for more potent, more explicit, more graphic signs of material. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement.
His core addiction to violent pornography then transformed into an obsession to act upon his darkest fantasies in the real world.
Ted, after you committed your first murder, what was the emotional effect on you? What happened in the days after that?
It was like coming out of some kind of horrible trance or dream. I can only liken it to after, I don't want to over-dramatize it, but to have been possessed by something so awful and so alien, and then the next morning wake up from it, remember what happened, and realize that basically, in the eyes of the law, certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done, and with a clear mind and all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact at that moment, absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that.
Yet he did it again and again, without anyone ever suspecting a thing.
I want people to understand this too, and I'm not saying this gratuitously because it's important people understand this. Basically, I was a normal person. I wasn't some guy hanging out at bars or a bum, or I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with him, and just tell. I was essentially a normal person. I had good friends. I lived a normal life, except for this one small but very potent and very destructive segment of it that I kept very secret and very close to myself and didn't let anybody know about it.
He showed no remorse to the family of his victims.
Are you thinking about all those victims out there and their families? Well, who are so wounded, years later, their lives have not returned to normal. They will never return to normal. Absolutely. Are you carrying that load that way? Is the remorse there?
Again, I know that people will accuse me of being self-serving, but we're beyond that now. I'm just telling you how I feel. But through God's help, I've been able to come to the point where much too late, but better late than never, feel the hurt and the pain that I am responsible for. Yes, absolutely.
One of the final murders that you committed, of course, was apparently Kimberly bleached. I think the public outcry is greater there because an innocent child was taken from a playground. What did you feel after that? Where was there? Were there the normal emotions 3 days later, or where were you, Ted?
I can't really talk about that right now. That's I'll do it about it. Being a paper.
It's too painful.
I would like to. I'd like to be able to convey to you what that experience is like, but I can't. I won't be able to talk about that. Okay.
And his last message before his execution just a few hours later still haunts the minds of many to this day.
I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
That's true.
And it's real. It's true.
On January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. On the spectrum of notorious psychopaths, there are only a few bigger names than Manson, Bundy, or even Ramirez. One that truly stands out is Tommy Lynn Sells.
I don't have no feelings no more. I suffer more here than I'll ever suffer in that grave. I have to live with it every day now.
Back in the mid-2000s, authorities say Tommy committed 22 murders across the United States. But according to Tommy himself, the numbers vary much higher.
How many people have you killed?
Lord, I don't know. I don't know.
10?
Yeah.
20?
Probably.
30?
It's up there.
50?
But see, I'm not Billy the Kid making notches on my holster, so I know it's been a lot.
Tommy was first jailed for 5 years after sexually assaulting a girl in 1992, but as it turns out, those years behind bars weren't enough to keep him from going on a killing spree, because just as he once said, killing people was like a drug that he couldn't stop chasing.
The first time I did a shot of dope, it was the best feeling I ever had in my life. And the first time I killed somebody, it was such a rush. And it was just like that shot of dope. Every time I did it, it was that rush again. And I started chasing that high.
In a chilling interview titled The Mind of a Psychopath, Tommy Sells sat down with ABC Nightline and gave us a little glimpse into his dark and twisted mind. He started by mentioning how he didn't know what love felt like.
I am hatred. When you look at me, you look at hate.
When I look at you, I look at hate?
When you look at me, you know what hate is. I don't know what love is. Two words I don't like to use is love and sorry, because I'm about hate.
Now, Tommy's killing methods were as random as the people he targeted, but even more disturbing is the fact that minors were among his victims.
You also killed children.
Some got killed, yes.
Why would that happen?
I didn't want them to live through the pain I lived through. It's just like setting their soul free.
December 2019, Tommy assaulted Kayleen Katie Harris in her trailer home before slitting her throat and stabbing her 16 times. He'd befriended the Harris family and knew Katie's parents would be out that night. However, what he didn't know was that Katie's friend, Crystal Searles, would be around. He slit her throat, but she survived and was able to give a description of what Tommy looked like to the cops, leading to his eventual arrest.
The only thing that he said is, move your hands, because I had him up here and he reached over the top bunk and cut my neck.
And being a true psychopath, Tommy didn't feel anything, knowing he almost took her life. In fact, he made that known when the interviewer asked him this question.
Do you remember the little girl who survived?
Yes. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her.
What did you do to her, sir?
Her neck was cut
How did you do that?
with a knife.
Do you have anything to say to her, the little girl who survived?
I guess you'll relay this message too.
He was handed the death penalty in 2000 and was executed by lethal injection in April 2014.
So what if I called you something that you didn't like, and you'd think about killing me?
Well, if we was in a fight and you'll get your head down in the concrete, then, so be it. But
what happens when my head goes down to the concrete?
Well, what do you think happens? It cracks like a coconut.
Jeffrey Dahmer, whose heinous acts of murder, cannibalism, and necrophilia is truly the embodiment of human depravity.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them.
And that's why you killed them.
Right. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Now, you've probably heard the name Dahmer before, the man who killed, and even kept the remains of his victims. This man was convicted of killing 17 males between 1978 and 91, with some of his murders involving necrophilia and cannibalism. He was later caught after one of his victims escaped, leading to his arrest and sentenced to life imprisonment. But a year before he died, he sat down for this interview with Nancy Glass, where he recalled his monstrous past.
When I moved to Milwaukee in '81, I started reading, going to the bookstores. One time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel. Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him. I had no intention of hurting him. When I woke up in the morning, he had a broken rib here, was heavily bruised. Apparently I had beaten him to death with my fist.
But his revelations were far from over.
When you killed these men, afterwards, were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
Why did you photograph them?
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. I also wanted to keep something. If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons. And I even went so far as planning on setting up an altar with the 10 different skulls and skeletons.
And what was the purpose of the altar going to be?
As a sort of memorial. A point where I could, I don't know. It's so bizarre and strange, it's hard to describe. A place where I could collect my thoughts and feed my obsession.
And bizarre perfectly describes what you're about to hear next.
Before you went out to pick up a man, was there any kind of ritual you went through?
I'd go to the nightclubs, drink, watch the striptease shows. And if I didn't meet anyone at the bars, I'd go to the bath clubs and meet someone there, offer them money, and we'd go back to the apartment, have a few drinks. I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
While his sentence meant he'd be incarcerated till death, he was beaten to death by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution, Wisconsin.
Did you like feeling evil?
No,
No, I didn't. But I tried to overcome the thoughts, and it worked for a while, but eventually I gave in.
Serial killers rarely show remorse, but at least they usually own up to their crimes. John Wayne Gacy, however, stands out in a twisted way. This man denied committing over a dozen murders years after he'd already confessed to them. Confusing, right? Well, in just a moment you'll discover why John Gacy might just be one of the most sinister psychopaths to ever walk the earth.
People don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it. If they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime. When they paint the image that I was this monster who picked up like these altar boys along the street and swatted them like flies, I said, this is ludicrous. I've taken 3.5 hours of truth serum, and under sodium amytal, the maximum amount that I could have, it shows that I have no knowledge of the crime whatsoever. Never have had. And when you look over at the photos, I have no recollection of any of them. Never met them.
Now, Gacy was a serial killer and offender who would torture, rape, and murder over 33 men and boys in Chicago, Illinois. His company that was into painting, decorations, and maintenance would rake in about $1 million annually. Plus, he had 2 kids and was a well-respected man in his neighborhood, mainly because he took up clown gigs during his spare time, all in the name of charity. Most people thought he just loved children, but they would have no idea that Gacy was in fact a killer clown. He would lure his victims to his house, tricking them into putting on some handcuffs under the pretense of a magic trick, and once they were restrained, he would sodomize them before killing them, either by strangling them with his hands or using a rope. He was convicted in 1968 for sodomizing a boy in Iowa and was handed a 10-year sentence. However, he would only serve 18 months, and by the time he got out, he went on this ravaging killing spree until his arrest again in 1978. Gacy's conviction for 33 murders was one of the highest homicide convictions ever handed to an individual in the U.S.'s legal history. But it looked like history was still being made because in this interview 2 years before his execution, Gacy went 180, denying ever knowing the victims or committing any of the crimes he was found guilty of, regardless of all the evidence authorities had against him, including multiple dead bodies buried in his home.
The kind of values?
Were you strict with them too?
No, not as strict as, no. A lot of things that my dad did, I refused to do, because I don't believe in hitting, and I don't believe in spoiling a child either. My values are nothing that if you give enough love to children.
Accused of murdering 33 kids, and you say you didn't believe in hitting. I mean,
well, anybody that knows, you see, first of all, you're basing this garbage on what you've heard of me.
He tried sounding smart, but just kept contradicting himself.
What happened to what happened in the Bukovic case? Where was he picked up, and how did he get to the house, and what happened with him?
I don't want to go into the other. The 5 that I know about, just take it that I didn't. Bukovic is not one that I killed, so I don't know nothing about him. The little bit that I know about him is that he was an employee of mine. See, when you look about this recall business, and
I'm not a prosecutor, John, but you just,
I know you're not. Wait a minute.
Is not one that you killed, which suggests that maybe in fact there were others that you did kill. And I'm not.
Okay, I'm sorry if I led you to believe. No, strike it then. That is wrong.
And in probably the greatest irony known to man, Gacy had some words for Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy.
What do I think of Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't know the man personally, but I'll tell you this. That's a good example as to why insanity does belong in the courtroom. Because if Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't meet the requirements for insanity, then I'd hate like hell to run into the guy that does. Beyond that, I have no comment on Jeffrey Dahmer because I'm not Jeffrey Dahmer. And I would not, whether it's Berkowitz, whether it's Bundy, whether it's Williams, Wayne Williams down at Atlanta, or any of the others, or Charlie Manson. See, I don't comment about other cases for the simple fact is that I wasn't there.
You feel somewhat of a kinship with some people?
No, God, I hate that when they put me in the same club with them.
But he definitely isn't just in their club. Gacy might be in the top 3. On May 10th, 1994, after 14 years on death row, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection.
I'm not only the victim here. I may be the 34th victim, but there are other victims to this crime, and that is the family Because if I know that I didn't commit the crime, then I have been given the injustice, and so has the families.
And maybe the only person who could match his level of crazy is the female serial killer, Aileen Wournos.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I lost my life because of it. Couldn't even get a fair trial. Couldn't even get a fair investigation or nothing. Couldn't even have my appeals right. You sabotaged my society and the cops and the system. A woman got executed.
Between 1989 and 90, Wournos shot and killed 7 men while engaging in street prostitution along highways in Florida. She insisted her clients had either raped or tried to rape her, and that the killings were acts of self-defense. Yet she was arrested and sentenced to death for 6 of those murders due to the compounding evidence against her. And just a day before her execution, she agreed to one final interview.
So I guess, I was just wondering how you're going to be, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Are you prepared?
I'm prepared. I'm all right. I'm all right with it.
As she had done for the most part of her time on death row, Wournos insisted the police were aware of her killings. She also talked a bit about her childhood.
But how did it feel like having to live in cars and in other people's
It was living hell. That's why I went to Florida.
living hell?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sleeping in the snow, sleeping in snowy weather in a vehicle on cinder blocks at Richie's house, sleeping in with no blanket. I think I had one blanket and one pillow. Then I know that the cops knew who I was after Richard Mallory died. I left prints everywhere and they covered it up and let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer. I know they did, because I was no professional serial killer or anything, or murderer, or whatever you want to call it, Wasn't special at what I was doing.
I mean, how?
Did some sloppy work,
And from there, she went off on her mother, Diane.
Oh, my mother, Diane, let me tell you something. She plopped me out of her belly, left me with my grandparents, and we never knew her. So tell that damn whore I can give a fuck if she even had me. She had me and left to Texas. And my mom, my dad, Barry, Keith, Lori, all of us never saw her ever again, except at funerals. My mom's funeral, my dad's funeral, and my brother's funeral. If she's at mine, probably be spitting on her. I could care less. I don't give a damn about that whore.
What more do you want to say about the cops?
A lot of stuff. Did you know that they were surveilling me before I killed? And then I knew it? And that it was covered up? Did you know there was helicopters dropping down from the sky, deputy sheriff, with decoys picking me up 4 or 5 months before my arrest? It was covered up?
But nonetheless,
nobody ever asked me these questions.
The cops were following you or not, Aileen?
Oh, when the cops are following me or not, Aileen,
Yeah,
what?
let's say the cops were following you.
Yeah.
Let's say they were following you. They did everything that you're saying they did. Nonetheless, you killed 7 men.
Yes, sure.
I'm asking you, what got you to kill the 7
And
men?
I'm telling you because the cops let me keep killing them, Nick. Don't you get it?
Not everybody is killing 7 people. So there must have been something in you that was getting you to do
You are lost, Nick.
So
I was a hitchhiking hooker.
Right.
Running into trouble, I'd shoot the guy if I ran into trouble. Physical trouble, the cops knew it. When the physical trouble came along, let her clean the streets, and then we'll pull her in.
But how come there was so much physical trouble in because it was all in 1 year. 7 people in 1 year.
Oh well.
She's talking about cops dropping from choppers and some other weird stuff here that just sounded like she was making up a failed Mission Impossible movie plot. But anyway, on October 9th, 2002, Wournos was executed by lethal injection after spending more than 10 years on Florida's death row.
You don't take human life like this and just sabotage and rip it apart like Jesus on the cross and say thanks a lot for all the money I made off of you. We're going to have to cut this interview, Nick. I'm not going to go into any more detail. I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my